the Hoopsology Podcast Season 2, brought to you by the Valle Citian. My name is Jesus Acevedo Jr., and I'm joined by the Zodiac GM. Zodiac, I gotta say, we're getting to it in the NBA season where it's like, okay, we start separating who's real and who's not real.
You're
who's
right.
about it and who's not about it, Zodiac, as the kids like
You're
to
right.
say.
And have you noticed time flies quick? It didn't seem like not so long ago we were just talking about preseason predictions, and now it's like we're like what 20 games out, 30 games out till playoffs or something like that. But
Give or take about 12, 13, 14 games, depending on teams. But it's we're starting to see that, and I think this is the point, especially after the All-Star break, when teams that have been in the playoffs, they've been to the grind, they start to like really, okay, let's turn it up.
Separate from the pack.
Let's separate from the pack, and you see teams that are not as adverse to these conditions at this time. By conditions, I mean playing so many games, series games. One good example is the Houston Rockets. They were flying high before the All-Star break, kind of struggled into the All-Star break, kind of struggling a bit out of it, So it seems like that are now learning about what it's going to take, heading into this deep stretch into the season. One good team that I think the Houston Rockets could emulate next year, now I know we're going to talk about them in a bit, is the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's a team that this year has started to really separate himself. But yeah, this is the part of the season where we start to see, okay, who's gonna be the top six. And I think, and the most conversation I think we're gonna be having about playoff seeding is probably the Eastern Conference, man. Why does the Eastern Conference always have teams that are under 500 make the playoffs? Like,
no, it's been like that for the last several years, but I don't know.
Been
I don't
like
know what
that.
it is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's one thing I'll tell Commissioner, like, let's just go to the top 16 teams. Okay. I think that makes it. I think that'll make it more.
Fair,
it'll suck for some teams in the fair, exactly.
Right.
And if some teams in the Eastern Conference are upset that they're not going to get their spot, but it's like, hey, you need to improve your team. It's kind of like, I think about it. This would be a good way. In soccer in Europe, they have this thing called the where if your team is last place, you get relegated to the division below, right? So like the second division, and then if your team wins the second division, you get promoted, right? So there's like some kind of a incentive to play to the end of the season. And I feel sometimes with some teams in the NBA, there's not that incentive. They're like, okay, we're under 500, we just gotta weather the storm. We're gonna make the playoff, save some jobs, But this way, there's an incentive. There's like, it's just the top 16 teams, the best of the best, and then we could get into. I think what that opens also matchup wise, right? We could get a Cleveland Cavaliers against Minnesota Timberwolves, just to throw out two teams, right? Or just something like that in the first round. So we'll ultimately get the best of the best. What do you think about that, Zodiac? Before we get into the topic?
Yeah, I agree. I like it. Of course I do. So yeah, I don't know. It's very intriguing because they need to do something. I feel like that incentives has to be something worth it for each and every team rather than just tanking. I mean, it's kind of obvious what some of the teams are doing, but they need to do something. Penalize them, maybe, or something.
Yeah,
but
unless
you're like, unfortunately, like what happened to Dallas recently, injuries prone, where you just can't help it. It is what it is sometimes. But there's teams that's kind of obvious that they're doing what they're doing. But I don't know. Something more to make it more exciting for fans too until the end of the year, finish it off and make sure each and every team's competitive. But I do like that idea, what you brought up. So, I mean, you never know. We'll see.
Yeah, because, currently 7 through 10 are all under 500. Yes, within a couple games, but still, we've seen that happen before. But, you brought up Dallas, and that's where I want to start off things today. So, yeah, is it just me? Or like are the basketball gods punishing Dallas right now? Like the Dallas Mavericks? I don't know. It feels like there's some bad juju, bad karma. I don't know what's going on. So
I don't know. I feel bad for Dallas fans, man. Like the Maverick fans. Like I feel like they deserve a lot more. I mean, what happened in the last 2 months? It seems like ever since Doncic got traded, everything just kind of fell apart. Where everyone's just Dallas Mavericks has been under a microscope, especially Nico Harrison, but. Luka, Davis, Irving, and then the two centers that they got, Gafford, Lively. I mean, it's just so unfortunate. And unfortunate because Kyrie Irving, wow. I mean, he's one of the best players in the league. I mean, his skill set is elite, and it's just unfortunate to see someone like him, get injured. And just you can just sense that emotion that when he shot those free throws after getting injured, that you knew something was up. And he knew, you knew something was wrong. And eventually, he has that torn ACL they just announced. And Dallas, I mean, there's really no point of them even trying at this point. I think next up would be Davis being out for the season. So, I mean,
which it's funny you bring him up. Excuse me, because they have kind of said that there's a possibility that he may not return.
I think so. Yeah,
next season.
Yeah,
So,
they were saying that they were going to talk to
right?
the camp, to his camp, and kind of just pretty much say, hey, you know what, Kyrie's gone. There's no point even trying to come back, because they're pretty much saying, hey, you're already 32. Just kind of rest this year and just recover and come back next year, and let's see where Kyrie is. And it sucks because Kyrie's due for a max contract too, and that looks bad for him because Nico probably betted on Kyrie to be healthy and give him the money, and wow, the tables have turned drastically.
The tables definitely have turned, and it's Nico was betting on a championship in 3 to 4 years, right? Granted, he traded the guy that took him to the finals last year, with all the issues apparently having coming out and being released.
Right.
But yeah, it took Mark Cuban such a long time to kind of build this franchise to be a respectable franchise, right?
Yep,
I know from like the nuts and bolts. I remember when players will talk about going to play Dallas Mavericks before Mark Cuban and after this, just in the way that the locker rooms were rebuilt. He said he was the first one really in the NBA that he would really feed the away team well. Like he kind of started that now. Other teams started following that, right? Because he was like, man, this guy's going all out for the away team, So all that said, it took Nico Williams and his new ownership group 2 minutes to just kind of almost lose all that goodwill that they had with fans, and it's really sad, and it's I've thought about like what will bring them back. The only thing is a title, right? That's the only way this ends for fans to be like, well, at least we got a title out of it, right?
Right.
But these injuries, and I mean, like you said, not just Kyrie and AD. You got some, Lively,
Gaffer.
What do you say? Gaffer, PJ Washington has been
You're
all the
right.
time. So it's just like, oh my God, these guys can catch a break. And yeah,
it's all Clay. Correct. It's all Klay Thompson's team now.
and yeah. So and I mean, he just had a game 3 points, one of I think 2-13. 113. But yeah, it's tough. And I think, I look at the standings, right? They're 32-30. They're hanging on to the 10th spot. They're going to lose it. Now it's going to be either Phoenix Suns or Portland Trailblazers. They're going to sneak in there. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason for Dallas. I wonder if they cut ties with Nico. They're like, we just need to clean.
I think at this point, it's a good time to do it because of the recent injury to Irving. Kind of throw it all in one bucket and say, hey, Nico's time to go, to kind of let the fans kind of recover from that drastic decision making of Nico Harrison trading away Luka. I think at this time it's a good time to actually do so for the Kings owner to but that's just my opinion. I mean, I think Nico Harrison has done enough at this point, and the domino. I mean, everything's just kind of falling apart right now, and it's unfortunate. Health. You can't control health. Sometimes injuries happen, and that's the way it is. And if they do that, fire Nico Harrison at this point, I think fans will sort of recover from that a little bit. But
I think what would be
bad?
Well, what? No, go ahead.
If because the whole idea of the whole thing was, having the owners move to Las Vegas, right? And everyone's kind of anticipating that.
Right.
Yeah. Everyone was kind of anticipating. Imagine if they actually do announce that, like next year, 2 years or 3 years down the road. It's just sort of like one of those things that you feel as a fan. You're like, wow, man. Like, like the ones that you kind of anticipate and actually does happen, and so much hate was just going to come out of this, and I don't know. They need to fix it somehow, but we'll see. We'll see what they do.
I think they'll cut ties for Nico, but I think they'll do it in the summer and start
off season, right?
Summer. Yeah, yeah. Gives the GM be like, hey, we got these two players hurt. They'll come back next season. Or I don't even know when Kyrie will come back, but yeah. So,
Yep.
one team switching topics from a team that's in the dumps to a team that's up way up high, and they have been way up high most of the season. Is the Cleveland Cavaliers. So they're like 10 in a row. Big wins against the Grizzlies, the Boston Celtics, the New York Knicks. The Boston Celtics one was, I think, really pivotal because they had issues with them in the past, and they kind of worked some different things. The bench unit helped them out tremendously. They came back, I think, 22 points down was it against Boston. That was a big win for them. And look, they're the first team with 50 wins this season. They also have to go out on the road a lot. But here's one thing. Here's how I know a team is good, right? By your road record. Right. If you can win away from home, that tells me that team is locked down, right? So because the Cavs have more road games to finish out the season, NBA.com posted this stat. Currently, right now, as of today, they have what will be the fifth best road record at 22-6 in the NBA history. Fifth best road record. They've only lost 6 times in the road. So that speaks well to how locked in that team is, But I think we have to give it to the Cavs. They've been the best team all season. They're like I mentioned earlier, last year they were kind of middle of the road, right? They made some changes in the offseason, obviously, and we've spoken about him a lot. Kenny Atkinson, Gemini, stand up, represent. He's got that team playing well. But they're a team that last season they were kind of middle of the road, and then this season now, at this point where we say where teams start to separate, they're yielding that separation. At least in the Eastern Conference, right? Because they're not gonna. 15-10. They're right there with OKC. They got him one game in the loss column. So yeah, wouldn't it be cool if we have a Cleveland OKC final? I'm sure the commissioner would just love that.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Yeah, you got to sell tickets. I mean, ratings. That's what it's all about, man. So.
but Cass, talk to me about the Cavs. Talk to me about this bench unit, like how. Yeah, and because like I said, they were pivotal in that comeback against Boston.
Oh, you're right. I like the Cavaliers. Okay, so the Cavaliers team is their strength. I think we mentioned earlier, and a few podcasts back episodes back was that their coaching staff is really strong, right? And synergy, like they're all compatible, right? But I love actually the trade that they made for DeAndre Hunter. He fits so well with this team. He's a Sagittarius, right? So whenever I look at players like that going into a team, if there is one, are they compatible to the head coach? So the head coach, Kenny Atkinson, he's Gemini, Gemini with an Aries moon. So that combination flows very, very well with a player like DeAndre Hunter. But not only him, he also fits very well with Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Darius Garland, Max Strus. I mean, all these players are important key players of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And notice, I did leave out Donovan Mitchell. He's sort of like that outlier energy, right? I mean, he's that Virgo with Cancer energy, but again, Virgo being a mutable, adaptable sign. So he sort of fits in as long as it makes sense. And as long as he's happy, he's willing to go all out for his team, similar to what.
And I mean, come on, how can he not be? How can he not be happy right now?
He's very happy. Number one, and he can't complain. You just cannot complain. But another interesting thing about this Cavaliers team, they have 2 cusp players. Jared Allen, he's a Taurus Aries cusp, right? So that's sort of the thing I understand with these cusp energies. So they have energies of both signs, right? So they sort of fit in sort of like that balanced type of way. Either hey, he could be a Taurus or he can also be an Aries. But not only him, they also have Wade is also a cusp sign as well. I believe he's a Scorpio with the Sagittarius. So that's interesting that I noticed about the Cavaliers. But yes, we have to talk about Ty Jerome. Yes. Cancer energy, So him being a Cancer, of course, that emotional leader type of leader, you can get a sense of just the way he is, that assertiveness that he brings into the game, right? And he's sort of like that spark plug off the bench, and he provides a huge lift every time. Seems like when I watch their games, he's just that go-to guy that just takes over. And big props to him. I mean, he's 7th year in the league now, and he's just killing it. And so this Cavaliers makeup overall is a great for even going deep and even maybe make a championship run. So this is a very, very strong team, from head coach to to most of the key players that's compatible to Kenny Atkinson. And I think it's a great fit. Darius Garland, by the way, is an Aquarius. I didn't mention that earlier, but yeah, Aquarius, Hunter's a Sagittarius, Evan Mobley's a Gemini, Kenny Atkinson's a Gemini. That group right there, all compatible to each other. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, man. Ty Jerome has been shooting. He's been hitting some shots. So he's been a great help for them. Like I said, I think this team. I wouldn't be surprised if we see. I'm stuck between three teams about who make the Eastern Conference Finals. Right, Cavs, Celtics, Knicks, and I keep leaning Cavs, Celtics. Just I think the Knicks. I think either the Celtics or the Cavs, one of them was going to take them out. But it's going to be a hell of a series to reach the Eastern Conference Finals. But yeah, I think Cavs are going to be serious trouble.
Oh, for sure.
You know what team used to be trouble? And not the good kind of trouble. The Detroit Pistons. They were rebuilding. They've been rebuilding for a while. Let's be honest, right? So, but when they got Cade Cunningham, the thought process was that he was kind of gonna lead their resurgence, right? Not what you expect they grow, like championships at this point, right? But just more or less play more games, more competitive games. Be competitive for the play-in, and it just hadn't happened until this season. And I know they have a new head coach. And I know last year, if I remember correctly, you liked the Pistons roster, that they had synergy. I one thing I remember because I remember you told me, well, keep an eye on the Pistons. And then, of course, I clowned you for it because the Pistons suck. But but this year, they still have a lot of the same roster, but they changed coach. So I'm wondering, and we haven't talked about the Pistons a lot. So what do you make about the Pistons this season, what they've done?
Their makeup is pretty strong, but here's one thing I just want to point this out because I'm keeping an eye on this correlation between defense and synergy, right? So the reason why I mentioned it a couple of seasons ago, wasn't it Minnesota last year actually, where they kind of just
last year
they just dominated, right? It seemed like you're right.
Yep.
And they had one of the top, they had one of the best defensive teams in the league. But when I analyzed that team and synergy, they weren't all that, quote unquote. They weren't really in sync. Right. But that's just the way I analyze. But here's the thing to understand. Okay, synergy, yes, there has a correlation with connectivity and chemistry and everything, but that's not all. That's not, that's not all you have to look at, of course. Of course, I've always mentioned this in the past. It's always an ingredient to your overall analysis. But from what I've noticed, teams that have a strong defense can at times just overweigh the synergy portion because if you have a strong defense that's elite from the average, right? So your standard deviation kind of like separates you from the pack. Minnesota did that last year, right? If you notice, Detroit has been in that same mold as of late, especially recently. They've been one of the best defensive teams in the league. Same as the Orlando Magic. I know we'll mention them a little bit earlier, but what I'm trying to say is that, okay, you're in the NBA. The thing you have to understand is the NBA, it's all about adjustment. So, yes, these teams do good at a certain period of time, right? It doesn't matter 10, 20, 30 games. But once opposing team starts to analyze you, they start picking up little trends of success that other teams that they watch on film has had on. So defense is a great thing. Synergy is another aspect to it. That's sort of the way I see Detroit. They don't have the best, quote unquote, synergy. They're more of the mediocre range. But I do feel this is one of those blessing in disguise. And I don't mean this in a negative way. It's just the synergy actually improved when Ivy went down, right? Because Ivy does play a lot of minutes, him being in the Aquarius, right? And also Cade Cunningham's actually cusped from a Virgo to a Libra, which sort of gives that okay, either or, depending on what the rest of the roster is. But the key is their head coach, JB Bickerstaff, and being a Pisces connects well with Duran. And that's a good, strong connection. Also connects well with Tobias Harris, right? But you notice they have those two shooters, Tim Hardaway being a Pisces. Sasser comes off the bench. And then I know Beasley. So they have shooters and everything. Yeah. So their overall structure and synergy is basically what I'm trying to say is that it's mediocre. Okay. They do at times throw out a really, really good starting unit at that A- range whenever they start Tobias Harris, Duran, Cunningham, Oscar Thomas being an outlier. And then usually that fifth fifth guy is either Tim Hardaway Jr. or someone of that nature. It's like a 4-1, right? So my feeling is they're catching teams off guard right now as a surprise, because Blazers
Yeah.
sort of doing the same thing. We noticed Blazers are one of the best defensive teams as of late as well. They're catching teams off guard, but once teams starts to catch on to them, now this is kind of where I see if their synergy is actually a strength of theirs. If that team actually adjust to all of this, analysis that teams have already done on them. So, okay, I don't know. This has already been 3/4 of the season. So if they continue to the end, especially in a series, there's tons and tons of adjustments that happens within quarters, and within games. I want to see how well they do on that. Pistons, I feel, are in that little mold right there, but they do have a rising star, of course, and he's solidifying himself as Cunningham, being that Virgo Libra cusp. And then also you got to give props to JB Bickerstaff. I mean, he's done well Cavaliers last year, and he's doing the same thing with the Pistons this year. So the way I see them right now, I see them as a wild card. I mean, and I just want to say that as fair as possible because they are doing really, really good right now. They're one of the hottest teams since the All-Star break, and hey, they just got to keep going, and they just got to keep going. But it just depends how they adjust. And with JB Bickerstaff being a Pisces, again, that mutable sign, he does have the capacity to adjust, and he does have the right energies around him to make that adjustment with. So we'll see how Detroit goes moving forward.
What element are they heavy in Pistons?
They right now at this point they are heavy more on earth and water elements. So you have
fixed.
Let's see. So you have Bickerstaff being the Pisces is a mutable sign. Duran holds that stability, him being a Scorpio, right? So he's that fixed energy. And you have Tobias Harris, that Cancer energy. And remember what I've always said, that alignment, that trio that I look for, that Pisces, and then in this case, it's in the water element, right? Pisces, Scorpio, Cancer. Those three players, those three key figures I just mentioned. Boston has that, right? Some of the strong teams that OKC has that as well, and good Cavaliers has that as well. I'm telling you, these things do exist. I mean, it's all there, right? And that's a strong unit. That brings cohesiveness of enabling other energies to get the best out of you, especially if they are big factors to the team. Duran holds that center position, is a big factor. Tobias Harris, he's sort of like that low-key no one really talks about. But when he was with Philadelphia, you notice they were winning a lot of games because him being that Cancer energy was an energy that enabled Maxey and Embiid back when he was in Philadelphia. That's what Tobias Harris brings to the Pistons. So,
I
that's
think the Pistons
factor right there.
Yeah, I think the Pistons, I think they're going to hold on to that 6 seed. I think, just them making the first round, just to enjoy it, and then whatever happens, right after the first round. But then in the off season, kind of like, okay, retool, see what happens. Because I think that's a key thing you said is that they've been doing it with that Ivy, right? I think he was their fourth round pick a couple of years ago, exactly. So I think they'll make some decisions, but I think this is good, and I think they found their coach. Right after they were kind of just recycling them there for a bit. Now they're like, okay, this guy, he's got these younger players to play. So, I think like you said, that's always key. And we'll go on to our next topic, and you brought him up. So like the Orlando Magic. And I originally wanted to talk about Jalen Suggs, and then it was obvious we got to talk about the Magic. But yeah, so Jalen Suggs injured, out for the rest of the season. And yeah, it hasn't been a good year for the Magic. Let's just say the injury bug has really hit them. It's their main players, right? This season, Suggs, Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero have played just 97 total minutes. 97 total minutes spread across 6 games. Wow. That is not going to cut it. Is not going to cut it.
But you notice, I mean, even though they haven't played that many games, most of the success were actually without that group you mentioned, which was throwing me off in the beginning of the year. I was like, how is this happening?
It's funny you bring that up because I was going to bring that up. I was going to say, from what I've seen, Banchero and Wagner, sometimes when they play together, isn't as in sync as when I've seen Wagner play without Banchero. It seems the team is just a bit more, there's a little bit more better play, And then, of course, Banchero does his thing because that's just talent, right? But
Yes.
no, it's funny to bring that up. So I definitely wanted to see like what do you think there is? What is it behind that?
So here's another thing, and I've been analyzing this for the last 2 seasons. I don't have enough data because I'm still working on it, but I'm seeing this trend, right? And this trend in particular, and I'll give out a few examples, is that whenever you have a roster, and especially your key players that are sort of opposite of your head coach, they don't tend to do as good as teams
Mm,
that do have compatible head coaches with their key players, right? What I mean by this, Mosley, he's a Libra, right? But who's opposite of Mosley? Bankero, a Scorpio, he's opposite. Energy, right? Franz Wagner is opposite, being a Virgo, right? Cole Anthony, also opposite, being a Taurus, right? These energies, these players are key players of the team, but they are all of opposite energy of their head coach. And I noticed there's been a trend on that because I was analyzing the league standing the other day, and I noticed with the on the Western Conference, top 6 teams. If you look at the top 6 teams from OKC Thunder, the Lakers, Nuggets, Grizzlies, Rockets, Timberwolves, the Clippers, or Warriors, whoever, any of those, is from their head coach. You pick out that core group that's under that head coach, have a strong synergy, and that's a big deal. But that's
mm,
what the Magic is missing, right? And I felt like a lot of their success in the beginning, and I've mentioned this earlier, was their defense. You notice everyone was
yeah.
talking about how good Orlando Magic defense was. And that correlation I was referring to was, hey, the synergy doesn't really matter as much if you have a strong defense, but once teams starts figuring you out, then you really have to kind of be careful, like, hey, maybe we need that synergy strength again, or we need some sort of synergy to kind of overcome that adjustment that teams are making against us. So the Magic had strong defense at the beginning of the year, and I feel like teams are already figuring them out, but now they're lacking on the synergy portion. So let me point
Mm,
this out. Yes, they are. Bankero, and Franz Wagner are compatible. Yes, they are. The thing was, they were sort of that mediocre range again with the synergy, right? Because Wendell Carter Jr., him being an Aries, he is of opposite energy of those two I just mentioned. Suggs is also opposite at that time, and also Fultz when he was there didn't really play much, but of course he was opposite. And then also Isaac, opposite. So Suggs is a Gemini, Isaac is a Libra, Anthony Black, who plays a lot of minutes as well, is an Aquarius, right? All of these players, and Wendell Carter Jr. being an Aries, all these players are all opposite energy of their two best players,
oh,
Bankero and Wagner. And this team has a lot of it's sort of that air dominant. What I mean by that, Mosley's a Libra, Suggs is a Gemini, Fultz, well, before is a Gemini, but Isaac is also a Libra. Black, Aquarius, all these are air signs. They all understand Mosley, but there's two strong energies that are sort of conflicting that. And the reason why is because they are their two best players and they play big minutes, right? And so that kind of throws off the rest of the synergy of the roster. So that's sort of the way I
it's
see it.
it's crazy hearing you say that. And I remember I was there was this quote that I found in an article from the Ringer.com also about the Magic, like what happened, right? Uh, this is a quote from the Magic president of basketball operations, Jeff Wellman. He told the Ringer earlier this season. We're still in a discovery process. I don't think we're a fully baked team yet by a long shot. And I wonder if he was already seeing that. Like, yes, they have talent on the roster, right? That's evident. There's talent there. But there's something just not clicking compared to last season. And I know last season they were playing better. But this season just things haven't gone right for them. And I know injuries have been a part of it too. We can't take that away, right?
You're
And
right.
as we head it, as they may, where are they standing right now? They are
They're falling. They're number 8. They're still in the
number
playoff
eight.
picture.
They're still in
29 and
29-33.
34.
I
Yeah.
have a feeling they're going to stay in the plane, but depending on how they do in the plane, I wouldn't be surprised if we see them make some moves this offseason to fix this issue, right? I think, but then I also wonder if they think about it and they're like, should we make changes? We just haven't had our players. So maybe in their mind, they're like, we just haven't had our players healthy. We saw what they did last season. Um, so I don't know, but I do hope they at least make a good run, right? Because they were a fun team to watch last year. Franz Wagner, Banquero, Suggs, they were really fun to watch. So That is the magic. I I know they won't do the coach, right? 'Cause I think that's the second season or first season, if I'm not mistaken.
Are you talking about Mosey? He's been there for a while.
Yeah, right.
Maybe
Okay. So
second, third year, I believe. I'm not sure.
okay.
I have to double check. But he was there last year, yeah, for sure.
yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what the Magic do. But that's all topics we have for you, for your listeners today. Zodiac, any final words?
Follow us on Twitter X at the Zodiac GM and Hoopstrology.
And follow me, Jesus _Acevedo Jr. and follow the Bayou Citian. And don't forget to subscribe. See you.